Welcome to Game Time, episode number 4 with Coach Calls Timeout. I've got my brothers, Brian and Brady, both coaches. We're going to jump right into the first quarter. Audience question. By far the most popular question that I received when I posted on Instagram, what are your coaching struggles these days, was some form of this one. How can I make sure our team members remember what they're supposed to do on the court? There's also questions about performance anxiety, not paying attention, that kind of stuff. It all lumps into how do we get them to do and remember what they're supposed to do. Brian, any tips?
Again, it comes down to practice, right? So if you keep it simple, you keep the instructions simple and repetition, that applies to all age groups. But definitely at younger ages, the simpler you keep it, the better. You don't need to be complicated. If you're efficient at what you do, you'll be more successful than having 17 plays and 3 offenses and 4 defenses. And you could have 1 play, 1 offense, 1 defense. And if you're really focused and good at it, you can be successful. When you talk specifically, usually the biggest problems I always had with that question that was asked is out of timeouts. And all it takes is one guy out of a timeout that wasn't really paying attention to screw it up for everybody. So again, I always tried to make my timeouts as focused as possible and as little instruction as possible. Keep the instruction short, brief, simple comments, and make sure that you're making eye contact with everybody. If you're drawing up a play to come out of a huddle, make sure you're looking at every guy as you're drawing it up so that you know that they're paying attention. Unfortunately, again, many times I've seen where the guys leave the huddle and one guy's grabbing another guy saying, "What are we running, man? What are we doing here?" It drives you nuts. But I guess what I'm saying, keep it simple, which I just didn't do in the explanation.
That was the one thing that I was going to focus on the most, is making eye contact, making sure that they're looking at you and they don't have that blank stare, that they're actually focused and paying attention. That's my main tip. Brady, you got anything to add?
Yeah, just as a coach, you got to adapt to the players that you have. And if your players are capable of understanding a little more of a complex offense, then be willing to implement it. But, if your players need it to be a little more simple, then keep it simple. Don't try to overcomplicate things and make things confusing for the players if they're not going to understand.
This also ties into another question that we have a little bit later. But Brian, in terms of simplicity that you brought up, and Brady, I remember when we went to Madison Square Garden and watched the ACC championship. That would have been pre-COVID. It was Jason Tatum, his year at Duke, and they had won the tournament championship. And at the end, we stayed for the speeches and all that kind of stuff. And Coach K had said, "This is the first team that I've never called a play for." He just kept it simple. They played basketball. They obviously had, some kind of philosophy and strategies and things, but they just kept it simple and they won the ACC championship.
Well, that's why Joe Mazzulla never calls timeouts at the end of the game.
All right, let's get into the second quarter. Play of the week. I love using my best shooter as a screener early in an offense. Let's check out why this play works so well. We're starting in a horns formation. Your best shooter goes here and sets a ball screen. You can attack off this screen. If not, the ball handler keeps their dribble alive and uses a second ball screen. While that's happening, your shooter cuts through the key and heads to the opposite corner. The second ball screen is a great opportunity to attack the defense as well. Your shooter continues to the corner and receives a screen that helps create an open shot. Here's another look using my custom Coach Calls Timeout Playmaker. To get hundreds of more plays like this for your team and many other coaching resources, go to coachcallstimeout.com. Okay, we've flown through 2 quarters. We're into halftime. This is reserved for our silly conversations that you might find in a locker room. Brian, you've got one today. What do we got?
This is more of a household one. So when you put the toilet paper roll on the thing, do you put it so that it rolls out over the top, or through the back. And I'll tell you what happens in my house. One of my daughters and I pretty much share one of the bathrooms. The two of us, for whatever reason, tend to gravitate towards that one. And we've never, ever once spoken about this, and I always keep forgetting to ask, but I always flip it so that it comes over the top. And every time I come back in, it's flipped so that it goes under the other way. So
passive aggressively.
Both of us are flipping it on each other, but neither of us have ever spoken about it.
I don't care. I just, however the toilet paper is in my hand in the moment, I just throw it on.
I won't flip it, but if I put it on, I'll over the top. It's much more convenient.
What do you do, Brian?
Same, over the top.
Okay.
You know what the best is? When I had shoulder surgery and my wife just rolled it all up for me and put it in a basket so that I didn't.
I thought you were going, but she wiped it for you too.
Yeah, that's right. I thought he was going.
Like a bold move.
If the dude wipes. Sponsor us.
Duty wipes. All right. Well, leave us your comment. I'll put up a poll in the community side of our YouTube channel. Do you like the role to be on the front or the back? Okay, let's get into the third quarter. We got a group discussion for the third quarter. What can you do? We get this question a lot as well. What can you do to help your players improve over the off season?
Well, you can put together programs for them. I mean, there's lots of opportunities to that. I know that within Coach Calls Timeout, we have lots of resources and plans for that sort of thing. But you can put together 20-day, 30-day, 40-day programs of varying skill levels and also of more specifically designed for guy needs to work on ball handling, or you got guards want to work on guard skills, or you want somebody to work on some post stuff, which a lot of people don't do anymore. But you can put together programs for them for that particular thing. The challenge I've always had, again, is that if you've got 12 people and you put programs together, 12 of them will do it for the first 2 days. And by the third day, you're down to 4. And by the second week, maybe 1 continues on. So it's kind of a discipline type thing too. And you can't babysit and make people want it more than you want it for them. So, but you can put plans together for them, definitely.
Absolutely. You can plan all you want, but also you have to manage your expectations. You like you said, not everyone's going to do it. Not everybody chooses. The reality is grade school, elementary school, high school, not everyone is choosing to play basketball. They're playing because they think that they're supposed to. They're playing because they're a good athlete and they like sports, or like not every one of them wants to move to the next level for basketball. And you have to, manage your expectations for that as well. But yeah, put together some plans. If they do it, great. If they don't, there's not much you can do. There's a lot of times where you can't have contact with your players during the off season anyway, so you can't hold team workouts and things like that where you can actually participate or oversee everything, I guess. You got any tips, Brady?
I mean, it really is just a willingness thing. You can't, practice is great during the season. They have to show up 2-3 times a week, work out, stay in shape. But once those practices are over, you can do as much as you want as when it comes to giving them a plan, but it's up to them to implement it. If they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. So it's just one of those things that you just have to, like you said, temper your expectations.
All right, let's get into the fourth quarter. This one's my favorite segment. I don't know why. Do's and don'ts. I'm going to give you 3 different things. You tell me if it's a do or a coaching don't. Playing your system and style regardless of your players' skills and strengths. Do or don't?
Don't. I think it's one of the biggest strengths in being a good coach is being able and willing to adapt. And I think that also goes for the type of team you have. If you're fortunate enough to be able to be in a situation where you can recruit your players, well, then recruit to the style that you'd like to coach. If you end up in a situation where you don't have exactly the people that you would like to run whatever system you'd like, then you better adapt and evaluate the talent you have and put something in place that's going to be allow them to be more successful.
Yeah, if your 4 best players are guards, don't run a 3-out, 2-in system with 2 post players and one of your best players sitting on the bench. Adapt.
This is what makes a great coach. A great coach has an ability to adapt to different situations, different types of players, and change their style of play. That's what makes a great coach to me.
And shameless plug, if you need plays for a new style, we have hundreds of them on Coach Calls Timeout. Okay, second one. Benching a player who misses practices. Do or don't? We'll say this is for high school, and then we'll have kind of a caveat. They're getting there on their own.
And they don't have some prearranged excuse of why they're missing practice. They just don't show up.
Well, yeah, they don't show up.
Yeah, I think you send a message and you bench them.
For a full game?
Maybe you have maybe you have some course of progressive discipline. Say you miss a practice, you're not going to start. If you're not a starter, you don't play first half. If and you move from there. If it happens a second time, it's a game. If you have a third time, you're gone. Or you come up with some kind of parameters. The thing is, you can put rules in place, but you have to follow them then as a coach. So you can't tell them we're going to do this, and if you do that, this is what happens, and then you don't follow through. So me personally, I tried to have as few rules as possible so that it gave me a multitude of outs depending on what the situation was. And if you're getting to know your players and you realize that, Bobby's got a tough home life and he's got a sister he has to look after because his mom works and he was late to practice because his mom got home late from work, it gives you some leeway to be able to work in those situations. As soon as you start making black and white, you have to follow the rules that you put in place. And you can't be making excuses for people. So A, I would say have as few rules as possible. And B, communicate the issues that you feel are issues and discipline accordingly.
Brady, what do you think? Do or don't?
No, I agree. It's exactly the way Brian said it. There's not much else to say. If you're going to bench your players, you better be willing to bench that first, your first best player the same as you'd be willing to bench the 6th guy. Because if you're going to bench the 6th guy and not the first guy, it's going to set a real bad tone and cause a lot of problems.
I will relay a quick little story that gets passed around quite often. When Jimmy Johnson was coaching the Cowboys, and there was someone who fell asleep in a team meeting, and he cut him. And a reporter said to Jimmy, well, what if Troy Aikman fell asleep in that meeting? Would you have cut him? And he said, I would have walked to the back of the room. I would have tapped Troy on the shoulder and said, hey, wake up. And his point was, there's a scale, and it's based on performance as well as work ethic, as well as coachability, as well as being a good teammate. And if you're late and you're falling asleep and you're not a high producer, you're at the bottom of that scale. If you show up all the time and you work hard and you're a high producer, you're at the top of the scale and you're disciplined accordingly. And like he said, life isn't always fair, but that's the reality.
I would caution, if you're going to choose that route, though, you also need to be building relationships with all your players so that there is a trust and an understanding that, yeah, maybe, Samantha is our best player. She didn't get punished for this, but I know that coach still values me. Coach, he can still be fair and all that kind of stuff. Because otherwise, there's a lot of talking behind your back and things will be going downhill. You always have to be building relationships with your players at all times.
and in especially in the younger ages, and their parents.
Yes. That's why I left this one out for elementary, grade school. I mean, that's a parent issue. If they can't get their kid to the practice, you can't punish the kid for that.
Yeah, 100%. You can't punish a kid for their parents. It's not their fault.
You can, because you need the parents to understand that there's consequences so that they get them there, right? It's usually a chronic issue where you have the same people doing it all the time. And yes, I should be able to punish Jenny because her parents always bring her late. Maybe her parents will stop bringing her late if Jenny doesn't get to play as much.
Sure. I wouldn't go, in that case, I probably wouldn't go.
But I would have that conversation with Jenny's parents.
Yes, before anything happens. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's go. Last one. Speaking of parents, cutting a player who has difficult parents and they're hard to deal with. Do or don't?
It's a tough one. I mean, the reality of the situation is it depends on the skill level of the player. I know it sounds bad, but if you've got someone that's going to be on the back end of the bench with parents who are going to be difficult, I'd rather have the kid who works hard and has parents who are a little more quiet versus the kid who's going to show up and his parents are going to be in my ear every single practice that he's not playing. That being said, if the kid's a hard worker and it's just his parents, I think you have to find a way to deal with his parents because, if the kid's a hard worker, you don't want to discipline him because of his parents if he's got, a good work ethic.
I think if all things are being equal and you're comparing player A to player B and trying to make a final decision, absolutely the parents make a difference. So, yes, I would potentially cut someone because of their parents. Not always, but it's possible.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you've had past experiences and you know that this is going to keep you up at night, it's going to make your year miserable, you're a volunteer, you don't want to deal with this kind of stuff, you're within your right to not keep the kid. It's very unfortunate that that's the case, but I mean, this is why coaches quit. Okay, that's the end of the fourth quarter. Now we're into the last segment, Brady's crazy stat. I want anybody who's made it this far, leave a comment with some stat that you've heard of that is just as crazy. Brady, go ahead.
You see this stat almost every year because the streak just keeps on going. And every time it blows my mind. LeBron James just scored double-digit figures for his 1,200th straight game, which is 338 games more than, or 334 more games than Michael Jordan, who has the second longest streak. Like 1,200 games is 15 seasons. Like that means he didn't get injured in a first quarter. He didn't get kicked out of a game in the first quarter. Like, how do you manage to score 10 points every single time? Nothing has ever gone wrong in a single game he's played in that I only scored 6 because I turned my ankle against the Charlotte Hornets on a Monday night in the first quarter. Like, it's crazy.
He's insane. It's unreal. It's so impressive what he's doing.
I could do a LeBron James stat every single night. He's what he does is ridiculous, but that one just, like, I saw Jokic last week played like 40 minutes and scored 8 points. He's the best player in the league. It's insane.
All right, there we have it. That's the show. Leave a comment. Anything that you liked about the show. Share this with another coaching friend. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you later.